It's time to make plans for the Chiefs training camp. They released the schedule and what the changes are coming, as well as who should they go pick up today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. We are brought to you by Gametime. You can get in there and get in the action by downloading the Gametime app, creating that account, then using our code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but you're going to dig it. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as NFL33.com and RGRFootball.com. This is Chris Clark, the owner over at KC Chiefs Corner. You can check that out. Get all the information that you're ready for as we make this run up towards training camp. We're brought to you by our sponsors here on the Locked On Podcast Network because we're your team every day over and over and over. Anywhere you can get a show, you can get us here on YouTube. Please like, sub, hit that bell so you get notifications here on this platform. Then go over and get on Spotify and Apple Music. And anywhere else you get a free audio podcast, you can get us 5 days a week plus. And then if you want a little bit more, get on the text line at 816-357-8781. We are talking training camp. What are some possible pickups? What should we be watching for on the wires, on the lead up, and certainly right after training camp begins? What are the changes that are coming either to the roster or to the setup? And first, we just got to start with, when does this all start? It's again going to be a change. And for one, I feel this is a little bit disadvantageous to the Chiefs, given that they've played back-to-back Super Bowls late into the season, and then they start early. Well, they're starting early again, and it's going to be mid-July. It keeps getting creepier and creepier towards the beginning of July. I don't even want to speculate what it's going to be next year. Right now, the full team begins practice on July 21st, which means the rookies and quarterbacks can report to camp a few days before that. I'm guessing 16th, 17th, we'll get official word on that, but that just seems really, really early to me. Is it just me?
No, it's not just you. I do think that it's going to continue to get earlier. Especially if they go to an 18-game season eventually, 18 games, 19 weeks. So I think that that's going to change things a little bit in the future. But you look at it, and the players' time off is getting shorter and shorter. But it is what it is, and with training camp kicking off at the end of July, it's going to be something where we're going to be getting a lot more information. We'll be able to cover everything. And I know I'll be there at some point. Haven't figured out when I'll be going, but I'm sure you will be as well, probably.
Yes, that is the plan. Depending on how these dates roll out, we're going to see. Out here, we start school a little bit earlier. So it really depends on that overlap and that kind of thing. But there's a lot going into it. And it's always a good idea to see the team at camp, but not just like preseason, but at camp before they break and they come back down to Kansas City to start practices and in the last few weeks as a warm-up. You really want to see them at camp in an isolated environment, and it makes a big, big difference. There's a lot going on this year, too. It starts off pretty hot, and it probably will be pretty hot. Practices are all scheduled at 9:15 this year. So it's not quite as early as it has been in years past, but if you're trying to get up there for practice, it is something that's doable without putting the players at risk for heat stroke or any of the real heat. And honestly helps them avoid some of the storms. But full team is on Sunday, the 21st of July. That is where it starts off. And it just gets rolling right away. There's some exclusive days. There's season ticket holder day on Monday. Then there's family fun day on the 27th of July. A lot of people dig that. Ambassador Day is the 29th. That's a Monday as well. And then you get back to another season ticket holder on the 7th. And then you have Saturday, the Chiefs play August 10, that preseason game against the Jags. After that, you have a day off on the 11th, which is fairly normal. And then 3 days of practice followed by what is usually a 10-10-10 run through and Military Appreciation Day on August 15th. And that's it. They are wrapped and heading back to Kansas City. So you got to pick and choose, but there's a lot going on and a lot of special days in this camp.
Yeah, there are, and if you go to the Chiefs website, they also have who is going to be autographing that day, so go check that out as well. There are going to be dates they're going to be charged for, so be sure to check that out. It looks like it's mostly weekend days. There's going to be a bit of a charge, so look into that. But training camp's a fun time. It's one of the things that I have enjoyed pretty much every year that we've covered the team is going up to camp, being able to see Whatever I see from the different teams. I mean, you get two fields worth of view. You can choose to watch one or the other, and usually it's a pretty good time. Yes, it's very hot, so be sure to have some water with you or to get some water. But it's a fun time.
Yeah, I always have a blast. And most importantly, especially when it gets real hot in August, you learn things. You see where the team is going. And it makes more sense when you see what happens, not only in the preseason games, but once they hit the field. Some things that you get glimpses of in training camp come to fruition in October and November, and as they go down the line. And so that's always fun and honestly informative, so you have an idea of what's lying in wait, what you can still get in there. And so the training camp process itself is a lot of change. And I think when we take a look at what that schedule is going to bring, there are a few days off there. And like you said, there are 3 admission days as I counted. Not a ton of time that's just off willy-nilly, right? They have no practice on the 25th is their first break. That's 4 days in. Then on the 30th, followed by the 3rd. That's kind of a short one with 3 practices. That'll be a week. There'll be a set there where you emulate a short week. I know that they do some of that. And then you get into kind of a stretch where the 8th, 9th, just before the preseason game are days off. But it's important because you see progression. Just like we've seen, particularly with a couple of players, including Louis Rizama in this preseason, this offseason OTA era. When you get to training camp, you see that progression, but it's compressed even more. It's faster and changes come about. And you get to see guys win their jobs, take over depth chart spots. And if you watch week to week, day to day, you will see a lot of change just in those first 14 days.
Yeah, and there's a lot to get in when you start talking about stacking days. Matt and I talked about this 2 weeks ago, I think, when you were gone, and I think you and I and Matt have talked about it as well. Just stacking days, being able to get there and see who continues to stack days, who continues to improve day to day to day. That's important because, yeah, you may have a great day one day, but if you come back the next day and, as a wide receiver or tight end, you have 3 or 4 drops, that's going to stick out to coaches more than your great day, more than likely. So that's something to watch. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see what Kansas City is able to do and how they're going to build things. Jared Wiley has been a guy that they've talked about consistently, has been a guy that's been stacking days. Can he continue to do that during training camp? Jaden Hicks is another that's had some great days at mini camp and OTAs. Can he continue to stack days? And then you get into the other guys, who's going to win the offensive line battles. Those are some of the ones that you'll start finding out once training camp kicks off and the pads come on.
It goes quick and changes come flying. So what are those changes that we could start to see? And will we see some before we even get to camp? That's coming up next here in the Locked On Podcast Network. It's a hot time right now if you need tickets, whether it's NBA finals, a lot of stuff going on in baseball. You can travel all over the country. It pays to have one place you can go to get what you need. And for me, that's savings. It's 60% off on Gametime, and you can do it last minute if you need to. I certainly do quite a lot. Whether you're trying to get a flash deal in Arrowhead, which happens every year for me, depending on what game I'm trying to attend, or if you're trying to go to comedy or theater or music, I just went to Zach Bryan and used Gametime to get there. It was a great experience, and I knew what the seat looked like before I walked into the stadium. That is my favorite feature. It's all in pricing on top of it. You get that panoramic view before you even get there, and you get that lowest price guarantee. If you find it lower, they'll give you 110% of the difference. No questions asked. It is a great place to do your ticket shopping. So take all the guesswork out of everything right now. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $20 off of that first purchase. It's super simple, and terms do apply. But again, all you got to do is make an account and redeem that code, LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off that first purchase. Download Gametime today. It's last-minute tickets. It's lowest prices, and it is guaranteed. Lots of things come in handy, and if you want to stay on top of all the news that's going on, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. That feed is 24/7 here on YouTube and available on Amazon Fire TV. Take the shouting out of your day and just get the news that you're looking for at Locked On Sports Today. Now, a lot of shouting is going on in certain places. It's been a rough offseason, let's be real. The whole Rashee Rice thing has been tough. Now you had a guy that I've been waiting to get some output from, a guy that I like coming out of college, but has had a rough go and has certainly had a rough summer. A lot of questions about what's going on down in Alabama with a business of his. Isaiah Buggs gets arrested for the second time this summer. I have a hard time seeing that be just something that's swept under the rug. I don't think a release is imminent right this moment, but I think that is 50-50 at best in the coming weeks before training camp.
I'd say 90-10 that he's probably going to get released before training camp. That's my opinion. I thought that he was going to be able to step in and maybe give them something this season. I wasn't expecting anything last year when they brought him in. They brought him into the practice squad. It's get him acclimated to the roster, try to get him up to speed for next year, and maybe he can be something next year. Now you're in a situation where you're right. They've had a horrible offseason. You look at all the different stories that have been around the Chiefs, and none of them have really been good ones. And now you're in a situation where he has now been arrested twice. And I'm not saying you can't wait and see what comes of it. I'm not saying you can't. But it would be surprising to me if they continue to just let it go, seeing that this is his second arrest in 2 months.
Yeah, especially at the end of last season when you have Mike Pennell playing great, coming off, he's back. Turk Wharton was starting to round into shape after an injury last year. Farrell even made a couple of plays in the postseason. I think now you're losing ground and you're allowing yourself to lose ground to a rookie like Fabian Lovett, who I'm very excited about in this defense. And it just looks like you don't have to be on this roster. And if you're going to keep making waves, you won't be.
And they just signed a guy releasing somebody
Alex
last
Governor.
week. So they just signed a defensive tackle. So that's the exact position he plays. And this is before his arrest. So not good. Again, not saying that it's guaranteed he's going to be on, but sure seems to be trending in that direction. We'll see what happens. Luckily for the Kansas City, they don't have to make any changes right now. They have, like we said, until July 21st, so a little over a month before the full team reports and has practice. Obviously, they'll get there, I think, the day before. So they have some time to, see how things are going. But I expect he probably will not be here when they report to training camp in St. Joe.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And the other change that I think we have to react to, at least, is the fact that we pretty much have the punter battle locked down at this point. Unless they choose last minute just before training camp to bring in another leg just to see what they have. I think it now becomes about who learns to hold, who gets the rhythm there. Do you really want some kind of battle there? Do you want the specialist? Do you want the backup quarterback to handle it? That is going to be Carson Wentz, folks. I don't think that's going to be much in question. But for me, that's the last change that I see right now before camp, unless something else crazy goes on and some other team releases somebody. We'll talk about pickups here in the next segment. For right now, that's the last question mark.
Yeah, I do think that it's possible they look for another punter. I wouldn't expect that they're going to. It's possible. Maybe Rekha wasn't what they were expecting him to be. Maybe this is their way of trying to find somebody else, but they liked what they saw from the DT. At this point, we'll see what happens. I think that Ariza is going to be the guy. I think he's going to be the punter. The question is can he learn to hold? And if that's what they are wanting him to do, he's going to have to do it. And he's going to probably need to be practiced between now and training camp. And that's something he's got to get down because it's extremely important. It is easily overlooked, but it is very important for that to be, something that doesn't have to worry about. And you look at what's the job Tommy Townsend did, in his time in Kansas City. There is not, Winchester is very good, but it's not 100% where his snaps are all going to be in the same place. You're going to have to get used to taking and catching the ball and moving around and making sure you can get the snap down. It's a big deal.
It certainly is. And it's got to get bigger because that's going to be, I think, one of the focal points, especially as we're looking at making sure that the Chiefs can expand their point margin this season. A lot of that is focused on the offense, but it comes from making sure that you get your kicks down too and you take the points whenever you can get them. I'm excited to see what comes of that because I think it all feeds in together. But there are a couple of pieces that still could get added to this roster, whether it's now or whether it's after training camp begins. What are the pickups that are most likely to get needed? We're going to hit that coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
as a golfer, for years I've been hearing PXG say nobody makes golf clubs like they do, period. And they're absolutely correct. I actually had a chance to go use my PXG club this weekend on Father's Day. It was a lot of fun. Got a lot of hitting in with that club and really enjoyed it. I did go in and I swung the PXG Black Ops driver, and it is a total game changer. You no longer have to sacrifice distance for forgiveness. No matter how good the tools, getting fitted can take your game to a whole new level, and they'll even give you a dozen golf balls for free just for doing it. What I loved about the PXG experience is getting a one-on-one with the PXG, the guy that's there to help you fit on your golf club. It was fantastic. You sit there and he looks at your swing, adjusts your club, loft, weight, the shaft of the club. All of it is something that could be changed, and it got me to where I was able to hit my driver a lot further and a lot straighter on a regular basis. Really enjoyed that. PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/lockedonchiefs to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and they'll give you a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/lockedonchiefs to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/lockedonchiefs. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See the store for details.
A lot to be said about building teams at this point in the season. I think it's taken a toll on what's gone on the last couple of years. So what can they do to improve? This is a very, very slow time in the NFL right now where everything kind of settles out. The executives, the coaches, they all need some downtime as well. The players certainly do, to get prepared for training camp here. I think the really interesting thing is that you should be looking at film. Obviously, the summer scouting series is always going to be going on for the scouts, but especially for the pro scouts. Those are the guys who look at other rosters. This is the time to start taking a serious look at who might be on the edge, who might be in a position, especially for offensive type skills that you might want to add. That could be either financial roster cuts, or could be in a competition that could end up seeing a veteran let go. Something that I think at a couple of positions could come in really handy. Off the top of my head, I would say running back first. If there's a competition that lets a guy that's got some pass blocking experience and certainly some game time experience under his belt, that's the kind of thing that they'd be looking to add to this running back room before training camp.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if they look that direction. And it's also not going to surprise me if for some reason or at some point Jet McKinnon is back before training camp. Haven't heard anything about him, but they always seem to bring him back late. So it's possible. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but maybe they're looking that direction. Maybe he just didn't want to participate in OTAs and minicamp, and he's been here long enough. He knows the offense doesn't really need to. So that makes sense if they go that direction. If they don't, it makes sense that they would be looking at another running back to be the third guy, because do you want Louis Rees-Zammit to be your third running back? I don't think you do, based on what we know about him. I'm not saying he can't eventually do that or be better than that, but right now that would be a pretty hefty role for him. I will say this, though. It just came out earlier today, and I know this is a pipe dream, and that's fine, but it's kind of funny because you mentioned pickups, and there's a wide receiver that just posted a video that is saying that his current team doesn't want him anymore.
It's sad when you're not loved in your home city.
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about?
I love I love the idea. I said it when the rumors were going around pre-draft that the Niners might be looking to not bring back Brandon Aiyuk, who I think is an extreme talent at the position. And I think in this offense, paired with this crew, it would be deadly for years. The problem is there's going to be a contract situation coming. One of the things that they've avoided doing at this position in particular. And so I can't see it happening right now. And if it is true, maybe things, I don't know. The Niners had some issues last year at the beginning of their season. Yes, they turned it around. They got back to the Super Bowl. But if things don't start out hot in San Francisco, could we be talking trade deadline and Brandon Aiyuk in the same sentence?
Possibly. And I will say this. I agree with you. There is a contract issue, and that's something that they got to get figured out. And I'm not saying that Kansas City should go out and make this move right now. I'm just saying it's interesting because everything that San Francisco has said publicly says that they want him back, yet they can't seem to get to a deal. So it's, to me, that says he wants more money than they're willing to give him, and I get that. And while you're right, they haven't gone that direction. This is a little bit different. I don't think that when you look at Aiyuk and you compare him to a guy like Tyreek Hill, I think you can feel better about Aiyuk's game lasting longer than Tyreek Hill's game would. And he's a little younger than Hill was when he was trying to get his contract.
You're absolutely right about that. I love the concept on the field. I think that's great. It's the logistics of making it happen and what you do to your cap going forward that would be the big concern for me. But hey, it's worth a couple of phone calls. John Lynch knows how to pick up the phone too, so I'm sure there's at least an idea of making that connection. Hopefully, we'll see if it gets more traction here in the next coming weeks before there's a report deadline coming out there.
Yeah, and it's going to be entertaining just to see across the NFL who reports, who doesn't. And T. Higgins did report to the Cincinnati Bengals, so he is officially back in Cincinnati. And there's other players around the league that didn't go to minicamp and are getting fined. We'll see who's available. I do think that Kansas City is always keeping their roster or keeping their eye on the league to try to see who is available, who may be available that maybe we're not even talking about or thinking about right now. And there are some different positions. Running back is one of them. Wide receiver, I still think that if you found the right talent I would think that you could fit somebody in here. It's going to cost you somebody else, but I think that it would still be a move in the right direction. What other positions other than running back do you think really make sense for this roster to be looked at?
The big thing for me is continuing to try and upgrade the defensive line, especially in the absence of Charles Omenihu. It's very much intact from last season, and we talked about Lovett earlier. I do like him as the new blood, but I don't think that can be enough. I think you have to keep your eyes peeled over there because that's a group that as the season wears on, you want to make sure you can keep them as fresh as possible. So if there's anybody like Mike Pennell that you can maybe get down to the practice squad and let him rest and not put him out until the postseason, I think that's ideal, but you got to have some young blood in the meantime to make up for that.
Yeah. And you're going to have guys that can step in and play, and you want to get them in. You would want to get them in before training camp so they have a chance to learn your system if they haven't already been in Kansas City. I agree with you. Defensive line is one. Defensive end specifically, I would love to see them be able to add a young defensive end. Although, again, we don't really know what's going on with B.J. Thompson, so hopefully he's able to play, but we won't know that for a little while, I don't think. But he was at the ring ceremony. That's a great sign for him going forward. When you look at the rest of this team, other than running back, I think you have to feel pretty good about where they are depth-wise between youth and veteran presence as well. I mean, offensive line, I think you've got to feel pretty good about where they are there. Joe Thuney is the only question, but I don't think you're going to make a move for somebody that's going to come in and maybe only be able to play a couple of games before Thuney comes back, if Thuney isn't able to play on time.
Yeah, I agree, especially when you have a guy that started games for you that is most likely right now looking like a candidate to be in there temporarily if Thuney does need a little bit more time. So I feel like they probably feel like they're squared away. They don't need anything on their defensive backfield. If anything, I could see them possibly trading away a defensive back for draft capital or something like that, given the volume. So who do you think could come in? What do you want to see the Chiefs do in making moves? It's all coming at you right now, and we're going to have it all for you all week long. Matt Derrick's going to be in tomorrow. A lot going on, traveling, and you'll see me from some different places here over the summer, over the next 5 weeks in particular. But keep it here because we're 5 days a week all year long, no matter what. We appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure that you like and sub and hit the bell here on YouTube. Get subbed on Spotify and Apple Music. We're here for you 5 days a week, and that ain't going to stop. So make sure you're one of the locos. We appreciate you guys every single day. Thanks for listening today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.